often I get approached by businesses to tap into my audience. And I think they have this perception that Black women are maybe single mothers and maybe they're just, all struggling and, how can we help? How can we help? But the reality is we all have very diverse, very different experiences. We are very different. And some of us are doing very, very well.
Welcome to the Wealth Conversation podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Selena Flavius, the founder of Black Girl Finance. Selena shares her journey so far in supporting women of color to manage their money better and improve their confidence. We also talk about the gender and ethnicity pay gap, as well as the annual festival that Selena hosts in March every year, the Black Girl Finance Festival.
Yeah, hi everybody. So my name is Selena Flavius. I am a finance coach, a trainee financial planner and advisor. I'm also a published author. So I wrote a book called Black Girl Finance, Let's Talk Money. I'm a British Bank Award winner. Yeah, I'm just a person that loves to talk about finance and money, especially to support Black women and women of color when it comes to their finances. So I own a business called Black Girl Finance, and it's all about empowering women when it comes to their money.
Talking about Black Girl Finance, what inspired you to start the business and focus specifically on women of color and their money?
I started Black Girl Finance for a number of different reasons. Number one, it's always been an area that I was interested in. Like many people, I feel like I came late to the party, as it were. By that, I mean, I was late to build up the habit of saving. I'm not, I speak to a lot of people and they are natural savers. Someone told them, or they just knew to save. That just was not me. And I was also kind of a bit later when it came to valuing my pension, or understanding the value of that. So building money for the future, not getting into debt. I did that at some stage as well. But finance and money was always an area of interest. And I always say I toyed with the idea of studying economics at A level, but I didn't. I went down the sciences route. And for a long time, I thought I was going to be someone that did science. I really loved CSI when it was out back in the day. And that was the kind of journey that I expected myself to be on. But the idea of doing financial and kind of services was always at the back of my mind. Another reason why I created Black Girl Finance was because I read about and did some research around, the gender pay gap that does exist, which is often more kind of shouted about, but also the ethnicity pay gap as well. And it really made me want to create awareness that actually these gaps do exist. And I know that for myself, as I was navigating through my career, I wasn't having as many salary negotiation conversations as I should have been doing to kind of try and combat that gender and ethnicity pay gap that we do see that does exist. Just learning about how, people from our community fare when it comes to things like retirement. Like I mentioned earlier, I've written a book, and in my book, I talk about some research by Age UK, and one of the risk factors for pension poverty is, being a single woman, being from, a diverse background, renting as well. So when I started to do research into things such as the gender pay gap and the ethnicity pay gap and just other kind of systemic issues as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about during the course of this podcast, I really wanted to do something, and I was really, really motivated to kind of do something. And it ended up being Black Girl Finance as it is today, and also writing the book. So I'm just really motivated by those reasons.
It sounds like this was what you were meant to do,
I
because
feel
you were
like
so interested, right?
Yes.
Some of us will read those statistics and do nothing about it, but feel like something needs to be done. So I think this was definitely your calling. Now, the world of finance, when even though I'm in the world of finance, I still, when I think money and finance, I'm still thinking, a certain type of person, usually male as well. And you weren't really coming from a finance background, when you set this up, it was more from a personal sort of experience, but also interest. And were there any challenges that you faced, trying to, bring this vision of yours to life?
I think the first challenge was when I first had the idea, and actually the first person I told that I was going to create Black Girl Finance, they weren't too impressed. They were like, why do, women need to speak to a woman, and why do Black women need to speak to, a Black woman? They could just go and speak to, anyone that's out there. And it's true. And there will be a small handful, I will say a small handful from my experience, who will, just go and speak to whoever is available. It's another question as to whether they will feel comfortable speaking to that person and feel like that person actually gets them and gets gets their experience, gets their, some of the nuances that come with, being from, a different background to the person that you're speaking to. I think that's another conversation. That was the first challenge. And I don't think that's uncommon being a woman in business. To be challenged more, to kind of have to prove yourself more and maybe prove your idea more. I don't think it's uncommon. I think it reflects in the fact that, women get like 2% of, funding, and then, people, Black women get even less of a percentage of that, a point something of a percent of funding as well. In terms of other challenges, I think it's just building a business, the normal kind of struggles with building a business, making sure you've got the right people and making sure you've got the right teams. I mean, so far on this journey, a lot of things have aligned. When I first started offering, and like you said, it was from an experience-based start. So when I started offering to kind of speak to people about their finances, more based on, some errors that I had made growing up and just learning, started having those conversations with people. It kind of grew and blossomed from there. So I, got invited to give my first talk once I'd created kind of the Instagram account and the website. And that happened very organically. It was like, I think it might have been Bournemouth University. They invited me to speak, do a workshop. So that was quite nice. I had also put out a personal finance book. And the reason being was I'd read many personal finance books, or many books around money, often at that time, written by white female authors. I think the first kind of financial books I started with were written by American authors, actually. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I wasn't an author, didn't know anyone who wrote. But what I did was I downloaded a course around how to write an ebook. And the plan in my mind was to just create these ebooks, these chapters. But because I built my website, I was able to put this mini series around money out. And that was seen by an editor. Asked me if I was interested in writing a book, and I was like, yes. And then, and that's how the book came to fruition as well. So again, I just think it's a little bit of God interceding at the right moment, at the right time. And I guess me just saying yes and being quite clear on the vision that I had for Black Girl Finance when I started it as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love the whole ethos around Black Girl Finance. And I think we need more Black women, I'm also saying this to myself, to write these books and share experiences around money, because it is such a taboo subject. And I find that even now, when there's so many people of color across the age range talking about money and trying to get the message across and teach people about how to manage what they have so they can build for the future and build generational wealth and in turn support their community, a lot of people still find it difficult to talk about the subject of money. And through the work that you do, how do you start some of those conversations with people who either approach you, or when you're invited to a setting where it's like a workshop or your speaking engagement? How do you manage those scenarios?
So I am the person that will ask you, have you got a bank account? Have you got a savings account? Like in personal settings. So outside of work, I am the person that might have a money conversation just randomly. And it's from a good place. It's not by force as well. I'm always respectful. But I think just making money conversations a normal part of every day is what I do in my personal life. And then when it comes to in corporate workshops, so I might be delivering a talk to, it depends. It might be 30 people. It might be 100 people. It might be 200 people. And I always try and get the audience to drill down on what's happening to them, because personal finance is really personal. So although we might be having a collective conversation, I want you to think about what's going on precisely right now with you. So I might start by getting them to think about, if £800 was suddenly gone from your wallet today, from your bank account, would you be okay? It gets them to start thinking about what's going on with them. So I really try and personalize like a large webinar basically for the audience, just to get them thinking about what's going on with them in particular. That's how I try and do it.
It's a very neutral, but also a great way of using that £800, because it could be any figure. And I'm sure when someone hears that, they start thinking, well, even £200 would actually have an impact on me.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, earlier on, you mentioned the pay gaps, the gender pay gap, ethnicity pay gaps. Could you just expand, especially, I think a lot of people know about the gender pay gap. There's been so much talked about it. You know, a lot of workplaces are trying to bring the salaries of males and females closer together, you know, where they're doing the same role. But the ethnicity pay gap, I think if you're in certain spaces, it's talked about. I think people sort of know that there's something like that might impact them. But could you just expand more for listeners? Like, what is it and how do women of color especially get impacted by the ethnicity pay gap?
When I was writing the Black Girl Finance book, I think the figure was, and this was back in 2021, I think it was, the figure was that, you know, Black Britons or Britons from diverse backgrounds were missing out on 1.2 billion due to the ethnicity pay gap. And we are, you know, I think we're like 3% of, you know, the UK population. That aside, you know, it just means that that money is not available to us right now as our disposable income. It also means that that's money not going into pension pots, you know, building for the future, building for retirement, you know, having the opportunity to retire early, having the opportunity to live a comfortable lifestyle even right now can be harder. So that was the figure when it came to the ethnicity pay gap. And I just have heard anecdotal conversations and had anecdotal conversations with people as well, you know, people finding out just through random conversations with colleagues that maybe they're on, you know, £15,000 less than someone that's joined the company after them. It's definitely a conversation to be had. And there's an organization, it's called the Ethnicity Pay Gap Campaign. And they are doing lots and lots of work around closing their ethnicity pay gap. And they do the Ethnicity Pay Gap Day, actually, which I believe is on the 8th of January. And they also do amazing work in helping companies to calculate their ethnicity pay gap, because obviously we can be quite a small percentage, particularly, you know, moving outside of London. But they help businesses to actually work out their ethnicity pay gap so that they can start to work out where the gap, where and why the gap exists. Is it that they don't have the talent coming into the business? Is it that when people are progressing in their career, it suddenly hits a bit of a ceiling, so that they can actually do something? So yeah, like I say, ethnicity pay gap is not something often kind of spoken about when it comes to kind of DE&I in businesses, but it is something that exists.
Yeah, and I think it's important that people are aware of it, but also that they know that there are organizations out there that are helping to close this gap. And it's becoming more and more of a topic in corporates. Maybe not everyone at the moment, but certainly it's definitely needed. I think having people getting more salaries, you know, I mean, higher salaries is definitely beneficial for those communities, for building wealth in those communities. So yes, I applaud anyone who's trying to close that ethnicity pay gap along with the gender pay gap. Speaking about Black Girl Finance, and I assume from the name that you're speaking mainly to women and women of color. What are some of the common challenges you've come across since you started Black Girl Finance and speaking to more and more women of color?
I think it's a bit of a perception thing. And I say that as, you know, often I get approached by businesses to tap into my audience. And I think they have this perception that Black women are maybe single mothers and maybe they're just, you know, all struggling and, oh, how can we help? How can we help? But the reality is we all have very diverse, very different experiences. We are very different. And some of us are doing very, very well. So yeah, it's that perception. And maybe it's like the media, kind of how we're portrayed, our people, particularly in the UK. So it's something that needs to be worked on externally. What is definitely present is a lack of confidence. So one of the questions that I always ask when someone signs up to speak to us is, how do you feel you are doing with money when it comes to your finances? And I ask on a scale of like 1 to 5. And typically everyone rates themselves somewhere in the middle, if not on the lower end of the scale. I tend to find that we are doing better than we think we actually are. I don't know. It's almost like everyone expects everybody else to be doing better than themselves financially. They always feel like there's something missing or there's something that they're not doing, even when they're doing okay. So that's always interesting. That is always very interesting, just the level that we rate ourselves at and as.
Yeah, I love the fact that you've highlighted that, because I find that a lot with women that I coach, and even women who I work with in, my 9 to 5, not having enough confidence in what they know and how they're managing their money. And actually, when you drill down into what they're doing and how much money they have, you're like, do you realize that
Yeah.
you
Yes.
can afford to go on the holidays that you've been talking about, or you can afford to have a pamper day, or just, have meals out once a month or something like that. I think we really underestimate ourselves. And I wonder if, your first point about perception, whether that's really impacting us as well, sort of subconsciously, where after a while we just default to what society expects us to be like, or how society thinks that we either manage money, or based on how much society thinks we make. Because I agree with you. There are a lot of women of color who are doing extremely well, even men as well, business owners, people in corporate as well, handling a lot of money. And I think the next generation is going to be even, probably commanding more salaries, because when I look at the younger generation coming into the corporate space, they're not keeping quiet about their salaries.
Yeah, absolutely. They're definitely not. Yeah, they've got the message loud and clear. Whereas
Exactly.
I think maybe the older generation, my generation, still have those kind of hang-ups of, just get on with your, all that messaging, just get on with your job, keep your head down, work twice as hard, don't ever put your head above the parapet. But we know now, and this generation knows that, it doesn't work. It doesn't often pay to be, the silent one plugging along in the room. You have to kind of play the game. And then when it comes to kind of salary, you have to just not be grateful for what you're given, ask for more.
And to know your worth as well, right? I find that they know their worth.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I stopped you in your tracks. So you mentioned lack of, confidence as a challenge, and perception.
Yeah, confidence, perception. I'd say another thing is just not knowing, just a lack of maybe that financial literacy. And I think it's not surprising. I know that I grew up in a household that didn't talk about money. It was kind of rude to talk about money in the household, uncouth, to bring up salaries and things like that. So I think I went out into the working world, and I didn't have the, conversational skills or the art of kind of salary negotiation. When I got my first credit card, I really didn't know what to do with it. It was just like, oh yeah, free money, I'll just spend it. And it's just all of these, these financial literacy lessons that they're out there. It's just knowing where to go to get the information. And I think we're really good at Black Girl Financing, kind of centralizing that information. We have like a community on WhatsApp, and anyone can ask any question that they want. And often others will chime in and just give their guidance within the community. We're not giving financial advice. It is something that we do offer. We've partnered with an organization called Women's Wealth, fantastic organization that is all about encouraging women into financial advice and planning, into that field, so into financial services, and then also giving the advice and making the advice accessible to women.
I think that information sharing, especially from peers or within a community, is so important. I think it's actually more powerful sometimes than, a professional in a way, because the questioning goes beyond the initial questioning, and you get that feeling of you're not alone. I think also people feel a sense of safety as well, right? Of not being judged. So I think the community aspect is great. I'd just like to go back to your book. I've listened to it. I hardly read books anymore because by the time I get to page 5, my eyes have closed.
Yes, audio books
So
are
it's
good.
audio books for
Yeah,
me.
same.
But I'll actually buy the physical book as
Okay,
well.
oh bless you.
Somehow I need that physical book.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about the book is that it's a personal finance book, different topics around different personal finance different personal finance topics. And in the book, there's case studies. So there's case studies of women that I've worked with, but also there are guides in there for you to work on your own personal financial position and situation and kind of improve. So the idea was that you are able to understand, okay, what your position is currently when it comes to, maybe the debts that you have, or whether you've got the emergency fund set up. Have you checked your pension? Do you know your credit score? Are you investing? What are you investing in? And it's basically a guide to allow you to find out where you are now. I also talk about net worth as well, which some people in the community won't look at their net worth, but it's part of, understanding your net worth is part of, understanding your wealth. That it's just understanding what your position is now, and it gives you hints and tips and tools to be able to come back to it in like 6 months' time or a year's time, and hopefully you'll be flourishing once you've gone through the tips and the advice. So yeah, just to really look at the numbers, which is something that we can avoid. Let's not pretend. It's easy to kind of be honest with yourself, what's going on, So it's about looking at the numbers, deciding where you are, doing something about it so that you can go back to the book in a year's time and be like, okay, no, my net worth has grown by X amount. I've tackled this amount of debt. I've now got my emergency fund in place, and I'm now back in my workplace pension if I've opted out of it.
That's what I love about the book, because you can keep going back and back and back and refreshing, the numbers and, reviewing stuff. It's almost like a tool rather than a book, right? Like you say, it's a guide. And it's one that I think can carry on with you for the rest of your life, because it's all very simple and well laid out.
Just, normal terms, and easy to follow and very practical.
Now, before I actually met you, I knew about the Black Girl Finance Festival, and I'd never been until earlier this year. And when I went, I was like, why haven't I been to this thing before? It's fantastic. So please share with the listeners, what is the Black Girl Finance Festival? If you go to the festival, what should people expect, and why was it important for you to have an event like that?
Yeah, so Black Girl Finance Festival is our annual event. We host it in honor of International Women's Day. And the reason being is that I want us to have a day. It started off very much with, there's lots of speakers, financial speakers, whether that's kind of financial people that you follow online, actual, financial advisors, and people from all sorts of the different financial fields as well. So it's a day-long event. And we have around, 10 plus speakers typically. And it's just a really fun day of imparting financial knowledge, sharing our financial experiences. There's always good food. Like, we had an amazing caterer.
Yes.
Yeah. This year. And it's just a vibe. It's a really great safe space to talk about money. We started off online. So we started off in lockdown, actually. So we did it online, and we did 2 festivals. One was just, general finances. And the second festival that we ran was specifically around investing. So we had different investing topics. So we did that, and that went down really well. And now, since obviously lockdown has been ended, we've transitioned into real life and into the real world. So it's an in-person event in central London. Yeah, we have fantastic speakers. We have lots of positive feedback around it. Some people learn things that they don't know about. We cover lots of different topics, so different money topics, but it's a really great day. It's a really great, fun day. And at the end of it, we have some drinks and, some music, and yeah. So I love the festival.
As you said, the food was great. The music at the end was amazing, but the speakers were also so phenomenal. And I knew some of the speakers from previous events, where either I've been speaking with them or I've seen them speak or on social media as well. And I just thought you covered all the bases. I think for me, I felt like whatever age you are, whatever stage you are in your financial journey, there was definitely something there for you. So I would definitely encourage listeners to attend next year's one in March around International Women's Day. So
yeah, always just to make sure we have something for us happening on International Women's Day. So yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, keep it going. I'll definitely be there next year.
Yeah, fantastic.
And just in terms of like the overall purpose of Black Girl Finance, what is the impact you'd like to have on the community?
It's me and a small team. So I have a small team of other finance coaches, which is fantastic. I absolutely love them. And our clients love our coaches as well. They're fantastic. So when I first started, it was just offering financial coaching, which is financial guidance side of things. And now we've added on regulated financial advice and planning through our partnership with Women's Wealth. And another thing that we do, we've partnered with, there's a lady that I know or a business that I know, they were doing wills, LPAs and trusts. And the lady has come across and is now one of our coaches as well. So it's something that we can offer to our clients and really impact the community. So these are really important financial tools and information that our community needs to have. One of the constant conversations that we have is, if something happens to someone within the community, and then people are having to set up a GoFundMe, to get money for a funeral. I know that I've had personal experience of bereavement and loss. I've spoken about it on other podcasts, the fact that I lost my partner. So we were engaged. We didn't make it to the aisle, and he passed away and he didn't have a will in place. The impact of that. So you're dealing with grief, but on top of that, you're dealing with uncertain financial situations. We were cohabiting. There's nothing such as a common law wife in the UK, which is a myth. And it's these lessons, these financial literacy tools, these, estate planning tools, as well as someone to look at your financial circumstances and give you advice and guidance around, what to invest in, how to grow wealth. These tools that are missing, and these are the things that I want to inject into the community, provide access to, Black women and women of color and Black men. If we learn ourselves, we can pass on this knowledge to our husbands, partners, to our, sons and nieces and nephews. And it's transformational stuff. I just can't underestimate kind of the impact that it has. Whether it's someone being able to get in their dream home, their first home for the first time because, our community has introduced them to that mortgage broker that, they didn't know who to speak to or where to go. Or it's introducing Black women to receiving regulated financial advice and planning. And what that will do for them, because, we know the power of regulated advice. It makes a difference of around £40,000, over a 10-year period to their wealth, their pot of wealth, whether that's pensions and ISAs and things like that. And this is information that we don't typically have access to. So that's the impact that I want to have. I want people, number one, achieving their financial goals. Number two, knowing, what their worth is. Whether that's doing the salary negotiation piece. Number three, with all of that knowledge and that income that you're earning, growing it and then passing it on to who you want to pass it on to. I can tell you some stories about what happened when my partner passed away without a will. It's really important stuff for me. And I think it's just the imparting of the wisdom and the knowledge that can be transformational.
We definitely need to be helping people in all those areas. And, I actually did a separate podcast on wills and one on power of attorney for this season because it's so needed. I feel, people don't actually understand how powerful those documents are. And also they're not that difficult to put together once you've put your mind to it. And I'm interested that you've also, thought about trusts and things. I always get people asking me about trusts, should I set up a trust? And most of the time I'm Like, you don't need to do it now. Actually, you could set it up in your will, but people are so fixated on trust. And I think it's because they watch it in movies and stuff and hear about
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
they hear about it, I mean, in movies, and think I should get a trust. But yeah, not everyone needs a trust, but you're there to kind of guide them and talk them through that piece, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it all goes together, doesn't it? It all goes together.
I guess the last thing I'd like to find out from you, Selena, is what is the one wealth conversation you would like listeners to have?
I think just because I know how powerful it is, I think I want people to understand the power of being an investor rather than a consumer. You know, understanding the power of ownership over just consumerism, understanding the power of compound interest and how it works, and having a longer term plan for your money and your finances. I think that's such an important conversation for us to have, because I think we have the ability, I think in this day and age, you know, we have the ability to start very, very small and to start very, very early and to grow and build wealth. You know, I think we have more power than we realize. We're not in a day and age where, you know, you need to be connected. You need to know the connections to be able to do this stuff. You know, we can literally invest from small amounts from our phone. And these are the conversations that we need to be having with the young people in our lives. And these are the things that we need to be thinking about for ourselves, because it's never too late as well. So, you know, I'm in my 40s. I probably got started in my 30s, late 20s, 30s. And I speak to women who are, you know, a bit older than me, and there's still time. And yeah, I think that would be the conversation that I think people need to have.
It's such an important conversation. And you're right. Technology has got its good and bad side. And sometimes we tend to see more of the bad side of it, but actually that sort of democratization of investing has been a game changer for a lot of people. And I always encourage people to just, you know, start small. You know, there's some places where you can start with £1, and sometimes it's not about the figure, but it's about building the habit of putting that money aside and having the patience to let the investment do what it needs to do for you. So, you know, I think you've hit the nail on the head. That is a very important conversation to have. Where can listeners find you if they'd like to know more about Black Girl Finance or find out more about the services you offer?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's www.blackgirlfinance.co.uk. You can also find us on Instagram, which is at Black Girl Finance UK on Instagram. But yeah, you can see everything that we're doing there. You can book in to speak to us. You know, we're a really friendly bunch of people. We're non-judgmental, down to earth, and we'll talk to you about anything. So yeah, do get in touch if you need any help and support.
Fantastic. And I'll put the links to your website and everything in the show notes for this podcast. Thank you so much, Selena, for coming onto the podcast. Thank you for sharing your story and, you know, what Black Girl Finance is all about. Already from what you've said, there's so many other areas that I feel like, you know, I could talk to you about, and I might call you back in the next season.
No problem. That's fine.
I'd love that. I'd love that. But honestly, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. And thank you for everything you're doing for the community and for financial education as a whole. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope you have learnt a lot from Selena's story and the work that she and her community do to support women of color. If you'd like to know more or get support from myself or Selena, then head to the show notes and book a session with one of us. Until next time, stay wealthy in mind and spirit.